Oh, I see someone from my own district.
Oh,
Megan, good to
excellent.
see you.
Yeah. Well, then that's wonderful, Katie, that you've brought such a wonderful crowd. We are streaming live on YouTube. Thank you everyone for joining us. If you're here live, it is an absolute pleasure to have you. If you're re-watching the recording, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to hope to answer everyone's questions. To that end, if you have a question, we have the Q&A feature open up. We also have the chat, so feel free to post your questions there. And if you're on YouTube, you can post your questions down in the chat there, and I will see them over here. And we'll have Katie field those live on air. We're so excited to have you. I'm so excited to be joined by the one and only magnificent Katie Fielding. If you haven't met her or seen some of her work, it's high fidelity, it's very quality, and she's very well thought out in everything that she puts together and does. So it's just an absolute honor and privilege to have you here. Katie, I would do a terrible job at introducing you. Your list of qualifications is as long as my arm. So I'm going to turn it over to you and be quiet and give you the stage. This is a shorter webinar, only 30 minutes. So, Katie,
Hi,
absolutely
I'm
pleasure to have
Katie.
you.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks, David. In short, all my qualifications, I'm a teacher. And so that's what I love. And I love just teaching people and designing instruction. And so hopefully I'll give you some ideas and share some of my ideas today that might help you in your classroom, whether you're a STEM teacher or maybe someone supporting STEM teachers. All right, so I have made a whole collection of STEM notebooks, and I'm going to show them to you today. But before we get to looking at them, I really want to talk about some of the inspiration and some of the thought that I put behind in designing them. So I was a science teacher for 13 years, and then I was a tech coach for nearly 8. And this year I'm my division's STEM coach, so supporting STEM instruction and initiatives throughout my district. And I think STEM, and I think many people think STEM is very important, and there's some really great data to support this from our US Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So if we're looking at the job outlooks for the future, STEM is it's at. Not only are STEM earners earning more money, but they are also a growing field. So there you can see here that STEM jobs are predicted to grow almost 11% through 2032. And really important if we're thinking about who's in our classroom, women are vastly underrepresented in STEM fields, as well as our Black and Brown students, Hispanic students especially. So while they may make up a certain percentage of the workforce overall, they actually make up a very small percentage of the STEM workforce in comparison. So we want to make sure that we're providing our students equitable, accessible opportunities to engage with STEM content. And we also want to make sure that it is really research-based content and experiences and what is going to be an effective STEM experience. So that leads me to my next points, which about like what makes good STEM instruction. And there are really 4 main things that really kind of you can do in your STEM classroom to make the STEM experience effective. We want to be moving students away from learning those facts about science to really, one, having experience with the science and engineering practices and principles. So you're going to see in the notebooks that I've designed that those are the focus, is having students go through those cycles of learning, those cycles of doing science or doing engineering, so that they are really understanding the full scope of the process of science or the processes of engineering that are so important to our good science thinkers. If you think about your students in your classroom that are doing really good at science, they're going to be those students who are really not afraid to fail, because a lot of learning happens through failure in science and not getting the quote right answer. The next thing we really want to see in good science education is that they're generating evidence. And so you'll see in my notebooks opportunities for students to collect both quantitative and qualitative evidence and document that evidence in whatever way they're gathering it. Next, the most impactful way of having good STEM or science instruction is making sure that we have evidence of learning happening. And so a lot of this evidence of learning, we know from John Hattie and that visible learning research, and knowing what strategies are effective and what strategies are not. And so we know that collaborative learning has a very high effect. And we know that getting good feedback, which is the next thing, also has a very high effect. So I love that in Book Creator, there's going to be some really cool ways I'll share where students can give each other feedback, and then also ways that you as a teacher can give that meaningful feedback to the student's experience in the science process. So that is some of the stuff that inspired me and I thought about when I was designing these books. I also really thought about the ISTE standards. I'm an ISTE certified educator. And so in designing these books, I thought about how teachers can implement the designer standards in their classroom and making sure that students have accommodations for the differences and the variability in the ways that they might like to take in information and share information. And also thought about the facilitator standards. So we're giving students in some of my notebooks opportunities to do some design thinking, and other processes like engineering cycle is also very similar to design thinking. And ultimately, they're using Book Creator so they get some really great opportunities to be creative in how they share what they've learned and what they know. And then lastly, I also love universal design for learning. And so I kept those things, those pieces of the framework in mind when developing these notebooks. I love personally Book Creator for the opportunities in the representation and action and expression pieces of the framework for students. And then hopefully kind of my design will be that engagement piece. My instructional design will be those things that really give students the opportunity to engage in those science processes. So let's just kind of get started. Let me check the chat to see if there's any questions. Let's see. Oh, all right. Don't see anything yet, but I'll keep going. All right. My first notebook that I'm going to share is my 5E science notebook. In working with science teachers the past couple years, I've really noticed, especially some of our newer teachers who are maybe coming to teaching from outside and are new to teaching, and they're teaching elementary school and they teach multiple subjects, they may not be familiar with the research-based 5E model yet. And so we know that the 5E model is the most effective way for science instruction in our classroom. And so we're going to start with the engage. We're then going to move to explore. We're then going to explain and introduce the words of science in the third phase. So we're not doing that at the beginning. We want students to, in the engage and the explore, experience the phenomena of science before they actually get those words that can be a barrier in science in the explain phase. Then we'll move on to the elaborate, and then finally, but not finally, because the evaluate phase is in the middle of this image you can see here. And so you can see that actually students do that evaluate phase throughout the learning process. And so you may be thinking, where do I get these great books? And so if you are in Book Creator and you're in the Discover area, you'll probably see this nice graphic that they put for the STEM notebooks. And if you click on that, you'll be able to access the 5 notebooks that are currently there and more to come in the future. And for instance, this is the science notebook. What I really would recommend that you do is remix this book. It's great to read it, but some of the things that I built into the book can really be best experienced after the remix. So I'm going to click remix this book. If you've never done a remix before, it's pretty straightforward. Then I just select the library that I'd like it to go into. So I'll select this one and I will copy it to my library. Then I can just click go to library. And a copy of that book, you'll see it will take a moment to render the cover image, but a copy of that book will then be in my library. And the best way for any of these books that I've created is I made them content agnostic. So it is not just for a life science class. It is not just for a physics class. It is not just for physical science or environmental science. It is based around the structure of a good science lesson, that 5E model. So you can then input your content into it to make it work for your science classroom. So I'm just going to jump into this copy of my notebook that I have here. And I just want to show you, there's a few things in the notebook that are not rendering. All right, as would happen always on a webinar. So I will try this one then. All right, so jumping into the pages, The first 2 pages are a page about me, the author, and the ISTE standards. And so what I would recommend you do after you read them and enjoy them is delete them, because before you give your students a copy of this, they don't need those pages. Also, look through the order of the pages and see if that's going to work for you and your lesson. A great thing about Book Creator is that you can easily click on a page and move it around and move it back if you want, and totally able to customize this template of a book to work for your lesson that you're doing in your class. So that is the way to remix and reorder. And then I just recommend that you revise. So on this page, for instance, this is for the engage phase of the 5E model. You are going to change where it says your topic to the actual topic that you are teaching about. So if it was cell reproduction or if it was biomes, I would change this word to that topic before I give kids a copy. So going through the pages and just customizing it, personalizing it to the lesson that you're going to be teaching before you give students a copy is going to be really making it a great scaffold for your students. They're not going to be like, let's talk about your topic. What does that mean? So make sure you make those edits and the revisions before you share with students. So coming back to what I also built in this book are some great resources to support teachers in teaching it and leading and using this book. And so I created some instructional guides, and you'll notice those are going to be embedded on the side of the pages in the book. And so those are made with Wakelets, and in it, I have a video where I talk about how to use those pages of the book. So how to use the engage pages, and then images of the pages and like what I would do on this page or how to use this page, some real directions. So some embedded PD as well about how to do the 5E model in your classroom. And then the next thing is Earth Day. So Monday is Earth Day, so I wanted to create some exemplar lessons to show you how I would use this notebook in my class, even on Monday next week. So if I was a 4th grade teacher teaching on Earth Day about electricity, that's part of the 4th grade NGSS standards, I would use these pages. So I've highlighted the pages that I would use, and here's what I would have students do. I would have them answer the question, like, what happens if we don't have electricity for a day? That's an engaging activity. Having them think about, oh, if I don't have electricity for the day, what are all the different things that I wouldn't normally do? Or what do I normally do that I can't now do? Like being on a webinar like this. So I've highlighted all of the things that I might do in that 5E lesson in that using this template for a Earth Day lesson on electricity. All right. The next book that I've made is the Engineering Notebook. So I've employed the NGSS, Engineering Design Framework. And so in middle school, that framework is to define, develop, and optimize. Those are the 3 phases of the engineering process that we expect middle school students to be able to do. And if you're not familiar with those, I've kind of done a little listen, so you can listen and learn more about them. And in the same way, I've done some Wakelets where you can learn about each phase of the engineering model and what to do with the pages of the book that are for that phase, the define phase, the develop phase, and the optimize phase. So they're going to figure out what their problem is in the define phase. They're going to develop a prototype or a solution in the develop phase. And then they're in the optimize phase, they're going to test that solution and they're going to improve on it. So that's the basic structure of the engineering process and what you can bring into any classroom, not just a STEM classroom. You can have students do problem solving with the engineering process in any content area. And because I like to provide examples, I made one for engineering. And so you'll be able to, I'll share this link at the end. You'll be able to go through this and see which pages of the notebook I would use. And in this case, I actually deleted some of the pages. I did not include them all. That's the magic of the template. You can really customize it for the lesson that you're planning. You don't need all the pages necessarily. They're just hopefully a way to get you inspired and supported in implementing engineering in your classroom. So in this case, we're doing Earth Day again. Students will be solving a recycling problem for their school. And so they're going to define the problem of recycling, and then they're going to research on it, because that's an important part of engineering, is finding out what are people already doing and how can we improve on that. Then they're going to develop their prototype of their engineering solution. And then they're going to test it and see how it works and make it better. And then what's really important to the whole engineering process, ooh, we have some music, is communicating what they did. And so we have a showcase at the end where they can display their recycled products and promote the awareness on Earth Day of this issue. So hopefully that will get you inspired in thinking about how you can bring engineering into even a social studies classroom. And then my third notebook is the Design Thinking Notebook. Design thinking, if you've never heard of it, is a process, again, for finding solutions, but it is very user-based. You'll see that step one there on the list is empathize with the user. So it's really finding out about the user of the issue or the tool or product that's going to be made, and finding ways to understand the needs of that user. So I like to give the example of hallways at school. We always, in my high school, it was always a traffic jam at one location. So great opportunity would be to ask all the kids, what happens at this location when you get there? What would be better? Are there other ways you could get to class? What do you think some solutions would be to you as the user, but also me as the designer? How can I build some systems to help that all happen? So empathizing with the user is the essential part of design thinking, then getting into the problem, and then developing some solutions. All right. So again, you may not have ever brought design thinking into your classroom practice, and I want to support you in doing that. So I've created these instructional guides, again, with Wakelet, that have a video and then have the different pages of the notebook showing you how to implement design thinking with these pages, what students would do, what kind of prompting questions you can pose with these pages in your classroom. And then, of course, I wanted to give you a sample lesson. So for Earth Day here, this one is geared for high school. This would be that they are going to investigate fast fashion, because obviously many teenagers are very into their shoes, very into their clothes. So this is an authentic lesson. Investigating the fast fashion and how it impacts our environment, our Earth, because it's Earth Day. Finding out, maybe they're going to look at the user as a teenager who can only afford a certain amount of clothes, so they lean into fast fashion. What are some ways that they could maybe lean into thrifting more? And so they're going to think about how might we help students understand thrifting is better than Shein, okay? They might think about that and define their problem, then ideate on that, develop a prototype for maybe an ad campaign, or maybe they're going to develop a product. They're going to prototype it, and then they're going to test it. So it's very similar to engineering, but that user is always going to be the focus and always going to be the central part of it. So hopefully I've given you a nice little overview of what you can expect to find in those notebooks, how to get them, and maybe an example lesson you could do next week on Earth Day. But I wanted to show you one more notebook that I made that I'm super excited about, and that is my nature journal. So it is, we know, spring, which is also testing season. And so that is a great time to take our kids outside and get them into nature. So I've created this nature notebook, nature journal, where they have an opportunity to go out into the classroom, classroom garden, or outdoor classroom if you have one, and make some observations, document. They can take their devices out and take photos to add to their nature journal. And I just think this is be a great way to combine Earth Day coming up and the classroom, outdoor classrooms that many of our schools have, and getting students into nature, because that is a really important part of STEM as well. STEM is just not in labs, but it's out in our actual physical world. So I also provided, and I'll share a link to this book, The central libraries are out, so you and your school district may want to put some of these notebooks in a central library, especially if you tailor them to your lessons that you're planning. That could be really helpful. And there's now LMS integration with Schoology and Canvas that you can do that you should check out. And I also have a newsletter. So if you want more STEM ideas, I'd be glad for you to subscribe to that. And I'm just excited to share more ideas for STEM, and I want to share more lesson plans along the way as well. David, are there any questions that I've missed from the chat?
Um, I'm going through now and taking a look because
Okay.
we've got the Q&A as well. Um, Beautiful books, though. I'm just so impressed by your work every time.
Thanks. I can't take total credit for the beauty of them, but for the design, everything's a collaboration, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we always have collaborators that help us make our work better.
So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about the interactivity elements of this, because I know that a lot of science teachers are going to say, "Well, I already do an interactive science notebook.
Mhm.
We have them on pages. What's the difference here?"
I think the big difference for me as a accessibility advocate is those traditional interactive notebooks that you've been using a while in class are not really that interactive. They're interacting between their paper and the student's brain. But if we want to, one, provide collaboration, which we know has a great effect on learning, this can do it because students can all get into their notebook. You could assign them by groups and they could work together collaboratively. But also students have that nice opportunity to share what they know through images, video, audio. They get to choose how they share what they know rather than just having to put that pencil to paper. If you're thinking about universal design for learning, opportunities and choices for action and expression are super important. And so these notebooks being in Book Creator allows for that easily.
Yeah, you really nailed it. That's for sure. I love looking at the different activities and how they are directed enough to let the students know what they should be producing, but are open-ended enough that you could add a photo or video or an audio recording. So it's really, really
Exactly. And I
fun.
even put prompts for that, like share your knowledge using video, images, audio, or text to not just cue the student into that opportunity, but teachers as well who maybe have never used Book Creator.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. I want to go back to the design thinking part because you had
Yeah.
talked about design thinking, and I know that a lot of teachers really are drawn to that just type of thinking, especially if you're not in like science, a
Yep.
science classroom. Design thinking can be really helpful and a way to bring in some of those STEM elements. But what are some other ideas for bringing design thinking into your classroom? I loved your idea with the fast fashion piece and the electricity piece, but
Yeah, so I think one of the really great things about design thinking is every school has problems. And so students are going to be able to point out those problems pretty easily. And then that is a great gateway for having them to design solutions because one, they're going to feel really invested because the solutions will affect them. So I don't think you have to look too far for design thinking problems. We all have them in our schools, and if you don't have them at your school, please let me know. I'd love to come work there. But I think that we all see problems in our environment, in our spaces where we are every day, and that is ultimately the first place to solve problems for it.
yeah,
If you're
that's
going
huge
to have
too
really good
because
experience being able to interview the users. And that's a
that's exactly
certain
what I was going
really
to say.
important part of design thinking is that user piece. And so if they are, seniors and they're going to solve a problem that's going to affect freshmen, they can interact and talk to those freshmen. Or if they're students and they're trying to solve a problem for teachers, interviewing some teachers at your school. So that interview, that empathy piece is really important at the beginning of design thinking. So think local rather than bigger sometimes.
I like that. Yeah, I remember hearing think big, start small, and go for an easy win.
I love that.
Okay, but I'm
Quick
going to throw
wins
you
are
for a
always
curve.
good.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you,
Okay.
and I hope this doesn't. I'm going to tee it up. What about if I want to use design thinking in math class?
Okay. Yep. Math, not a stretch. Okay. Again, keeping the thought on the school, you can have them, if they're trying to design a ideal school, think about the opportunities for them to explore and implement measurement area, those math geometry concepts into their design. So they're going to, one, ask other students, what would be the ideal school? That's the first phase, that empathize phase. Then they're going to ask the questions and define the problem. Then they're later going to prototype and build a actual maybe 3D model utilizing measurement, area into their model. So they have to apply those math concepts that they've learned to solve the problem and design that ideal school space.
I like that a lot too, because that lesson, I mean, what you just described could quite easily be transdisciplinary, right? It could span some curriculums and really bring some classes together. So I really love that. That's really great. Well, you hit my curveball out of the park, so I don't have any more for you. Anyone in the chat? Okay, looks like we have one. I love the idea of the nature journal. This person's in Hawaii.
Ooh.
If you're outside, do you need to be in a Wi-Fi in order to use the template? Okay,
Oh,
if we're
great.
outdoors.
Great question. So I think this could be an opportunity where maybe students, if they have iPads, they could take the iPads certainly out into the schoolyard, take pictures, and then go back in and kind of do some of that documenting. I know that many schools now do have Wi-Fi outside because of our recent pandemic. And then I know, at least in my divisions, like that's how they gave students some access, was by making the parking lots Wi-Fi locations.
Yeah.
And so now our whole schoolyard is Wi-Fi.
Nice.
So ideally, yes, they could have Wi-Fi, but there's certainly ways for them to do it, even if they don't.
Yeah, and I imagine too, if they have an iPad and they don't have Wi-Fi, they could perhaps be, you could download the book as a PDF. You could
Yeah,
use some feature on the iPad if they wanted to take some notes. And then if they
yeah,
have the iPad, that's the chance for them to take the evidence of their learning that then once they're back in the classroom, they could upload, into the cloud.
yeah. They could certainly
Um,
do use like the annotation tools for sure, an iPad to do that.
yeah.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, it was a great
Yeah.
question. Thank you so much for asking. Okay, it looks like I don't have any more questions, and we are like right on time, so I really appreciate it. Katie, your energy and your perspective is always such a eye opener, and it's so fresh and so connected to the classroom. So it's just so wonderful to have you here. I see you just posted the resource to this book that you shared.
Mhm.
Obviously, it has links to the journals, but you can find those, like you said, Katie, at app.bookcreator.com. You can just click on the Discover tab. It'll be right up there for you to find. And the link to Katie's presentation book, we will also be emailing out. So if you are watching this and recording and you registered, you'll have a copy in your inbox. If you're watching the recording, you didn't register, just go down to the description of this video and you will find a link to that book and the resources that Katie shared today. So again, I just can't express how much of an honor it is to have you on with us and to have you
Oh,
share your knowledge.
it's been an honor. It's been all mine. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's always a pleasure. And here's to many more. Thank you all for joining us live and thank you for watching the recording.